Alright everybody, welcome back to another Ask a Dev Unreal Engine tutorial. My name is Kevin. Today we are going to be taking a look at the best turn in place, which is no turn in place. And I say that a little bit tongue in cheek, but the goal here is we are going to implement a jump turn. And the reason we want to do that is a jump turn for smaller projects, early prototypes, and even some enemies potentially can help reduce the number of assets you have to make. And despite what you might be thinking as far as it not looking great, it actually has been proven super well to do really well in a lot of different situations. So let me share with you two practical real world examples of when I learned a ton about humility and also just from the talented people around me. So first one, Tomasz, if you're out there, big shout out to Tomasz. We're working on a project and we needed to do turn in place, and Tomasz is like, well, we'll just do jump turns. We won't even deal with all the foot placement and everything. And we were all like, no, come on, man, we're AAA game devs. We're not gonna do it. Dude, it looked great. It was perfect. It totally satisfied the stuff, saved a ton of time. It was awesome. Also, just testament to the skill of the animator involved. Probably not gonna be the level of animation that you're gonna see that we're working on today. Second great example of when jump turn in place type thinking is great. Dave Gibson did a really great talk. I will try to find the link to that, and if I can, I'll put it down below. And he was basically talking about how on Evolve, rather than having their enemy characters turn, what they did is they tied the turn to an attack. So it's a similar kind of thinking, so that if the character was going to turn, it just always attacked. It would attack to the left or the right, or it would do a 180 attack. And that's actually how that character turned. It turned by getting aggro and turning around. So, and that I'm almost positive is exactly how the final enemy, some of the final enemies ended up being implemented on that project. So I've been super fortunate to work with a lot of really talented people. Huge shout out to Dave and Tomasz for teaching me a ton of stuff. And also, just as a learning point for all of you, it does work. It can help save time, and no matter what, it's good to understand how you might drive a turn in place, as well as we're going to do a little tricky stuff with sequence evaluators to specifically drive animation through rotation and pick a specific frame to help us do an antic. So that's everything we're covering today. As always, if you dig what we're doing with the channel, we've got, there's lots of ways to support the channel. We've got the tips, the Patreon, help spreading the word, hop in Discord, help answer questions. All of that stuff is appreciated. So with that, let's hop in Unreal and get going. Okay, so here we are on Unreal Engine, and what we have is we have a project that's set up with a jump in place instead of turn in place. And the actual turn in place part of it is really fairly basic. Once you get to your threshold, the character is going to jump instead. So you can see that they're basically just hopping. And there's a lot of cool things you can do with the kind of like the dynamic procedural aspect of this. You could change the jump height of the character and think. We're not going to get into all that. We're just going to get it set up so you can see how the jump works. And then I am going to show you another really cool thing about sequence evaluators that you can see here. As the character is moving through a portion of this, the antic is tied to how close they're getting to that jump threshold. So I want to show you all how to do that as well, just to give you more tools and understandings, so that as you actually get in to start to develop some of your own animation blueprint trees and things like that, you have that available. So those are the two things that we're going to be working on to implement this kind of jump in place. And the cool thing is, the character can swing a long way around and it'll still look fine as the character is doing that. Now, obviously, this would look better if the character was holding their weapon and all kinds of stuff. There was overlap where, this isn't an animation course in an hour and a half or whatever this is going to take, but it will hopefully help give you an idea of what goes into all of this stuff. So here we go. Let's hop into a new project and get going. Okay, our project setup for this round is going to be a third-person character project. This is Unreal Engine 5.4, but again, we're teaching more about the why and the how as opposed to the specific tooling. So first thing we want to do, as I mentioned, is we want to author a jump turn. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new map like we've done before, where, and keep in mind, like I said, if you want to skip ahead to the blueprint, the animation blueprints part of it, go ahead and do that. But in our previous animation setup tips, what we did is we made an anim stage. I like working with the anim stage because it's cleaner. I don't have anything there. So let's make a quick anim stage. We'll save that. and it's pretty quick to set up. In here, we're going to drop in a cube. We'll take this cube, and in our details, which for some reason is missing, details, here we go. Let's make this first, let's put the cube at the middle. We'll scale it 100 in each direction, and we'll drop it down by 50 just to get it centered. And then I'm also going to put a procedural grid on this, the material instance procedural grid. And then in order to, we can't see anything because we don't have a light, so let's drop in a directional light. Okay, so we now have our sequence, our anim stage set up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to author this stuff in a source folder. So let's make a new folder, art source, because I want to create a link between our animation sequence and the final animation. So our level sequence, I mean. All right, and in here, let's create a new level sequence under cinematics, level sequence. We're going to call this level sequence jump turn. Okay, so let's come in here, and we need a couple of things. So let's add a, we need a control rig in here. Actually, let's just do, yeah, let's drop in Manny. Okay, so we need not the animations, but the actual mesh. Oh, that was animations. Here we go. So let's drop in Manny. And once again, I managed to close down my details panel. Let's zero Manny out so that Manny is in the middle. Cool. And then we will go to our sequencer, and let's add our character or our actor, which in this case is Manny. And I want to do a couple of things by default. Oh, interestingly enough, it went ahead and it gave us our control rig as part of that. So let's save this so that we're kind of set. And I do want to drop in, let's do this. I'm actually going to delete this control rig. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the idle animation on this. The reason I'm doing this is because I would like my pose for this jump to start from the idle. That way, my first pose, there isn't a pop between my first pose and my idle, which is generally, we're going to be in idle when we do these jump turns. So I'm just trying to help the system out. And I'm going to take this idle and I'm going to bake this to the control rig, in this case, the CR mannequin. And when we pop this up, we'll just go ahead and click on, sure, create. And it's going to go ahead and bake that all out. So we should be able to delete our animation track. And now we have our idle track. Now I don't need everything in this idle track. I only need the first frame. Ultimately, you would probably want to put in some kind of additive breathe, etc. But for now, this will work. And I'm going to change the length of our animation to be, let's just go 30, because we're not going to be using a ton of time. Actually, let's go back to 170 real quick. I want to move my red in time down to 30. Then I'm going to make this timeline about 35 so I can see it. Okay, cool. I'm also going to turn on auto key by clicking this button. That way, as I move things in the scene, I will be setting keyframes and I can actually animate this character moving. So let's go ahead and zoom in. Our camera settings are good. I've already adjusted my middle mouse button, and you can see my camera is set to 0.33. All right, so that's it. We are set up. We are good to go. Let's go ahead and save this. One thing we could do if we wanted to is we could take this and we could create a linked animation sequence now, and then that will update. So if I create a linked animation sequence underneath the anims for Manny, I can call this my anim sequence jump turn. You can't see what I'm typing. There you go. We'll go ahead and create that, and then we'll just go ahead and export. Now, any changes I make in here will update that animation sequence. You can see that in our content browser. When we go to our animations for Manny, this is our jump turn. Right now, it is a single frame, not doing anything. Okay? So let's go back and let's get back to our animation, because that's what we're working on right now. All right, now this is gonna be rough. In a previous life, I very much enjoyed animating, but I am definitely rusty, but we should be able to make this look reasonable. So let's just try to see what we can do. We know we want our character's legs to bend. And as we go, we're going to kind of drop this down. So our character dropping down, and then they're going to spring up, let's say by frame 14. They're at the height of the jump. We'll fix all the legs and everything in a second. And then we want this to be a fast up, and then let's say we land by 19. So by 19, we're going to go back to where we started. We could also overlap a little bit with the body weight. So we're going to go up, come down. Let's just say we overshoot a little bit, just a little bit, because we don't want it to be too much. If it's too much, if the motion's too broad and we're constantly jumping as we turn in place, it's going to be very distracting for the player. So there's a balance here. So let's call that 4. And then we are set to loop, and so we can just look at the body. All right, so we're getting there, but this up is a little bit slow. So let's cheat this up faster to just get the timing a little bit better. Okay, so now we have a little bit of hang time. That's cool. All right, that's gonna work. All right, now as we launch, what we want is we want our feet to have this nice stay behind and then an overlap, and we want to get our squash and stretch in here. So let's just work with both feet. For now, we're going to work with them in the same spot. So it's going to come up, and then by the time we land, let's say that this is where we land with our feet, and we'll keep them where they are. Let's set a keyframe at the beginning, and then we could probably rock onto the toe here, onto the ball of the foot to make it more interesting. And then as we come up, let's go set a key here, and then as we leave, we'll rotate these. Oh, undo. Oh man, our world. I accidentally had the world picked, or the what do you want to call that? The ground. I accidentally had the ground selected. Okay, so. All right, so we have both feet. Let's make sure. All right, so let's rock these back. So we're going to leave the ground. Now we're going to fix this knee height thing. And then when it reaches the top, we're going to want to have them come up. So this is going to be, let's say, somewhere up here. Let's just bring these up. And we'll offset them a little bit. Just so that everything's not twinning. Okay. Pop. Okay, now our feet are going down too fast. We want them to be stretching to touch the floor as best we can. Also, I want to make the feet slide inward here in a minute. I'll show you that in a second. And then we're going to drag them a little bit so they lag behind just a bit with the body. Let's see if we can get this. So body, feet are up, body. Let's try 2 frames. Okay, so not great, but still it's a start. It's a start. Okay, now we're gonna get some chest and everything into this. All right, so when we leave the ground, our legs come up. That part doesn't bug me so much as the down. I kind of want these feet to be pretty close to the ground by this frame. Yeah. And we may need to change our keyframe slightly. And is there a way for me to only show selected? Selected nodes only. That interesting. Selected nodes only doesn't really work from what I can tell. So let's just grab that and our other foot. And what were we doing? We were coming up. And I think we were going to move these down. Okay, our leg extensions is a bit much. So let's fix those a little bit. Okay, cool. So our body could go a little bit higher so we could get more of a straight. Our legs are coming up so fast that we're not getting the straight that we want here. So, and that's because if we look at our body, let's take a look at our body. And we can look at the curve for the body too. If we take a look at this, yeah, let's try something more like, let's see what that looks like. Okay, cool. So we got a little bit of a hop going. Now what I want to do, there's a bunch of twinning going on. There's like zero happening in the spine. We're gonna mess with that here in a second. But what I want to do is, I'm going to make it so that as the character leaves the ground, the feet come together. And I want to do that because I want it. It's a distraction thing. At least if I can remember how I've seen examples of this done before. As the feet come in, it's almost like a dancer. The feet come in and they can spin, and you don't have these 2 feet out on the edge that are too distracting. The closer they're in, it'll just look like they're spinning. So I'm going to actually take this and I'm going to move it towards the middle. Same thing here, and see if we can make this look reasonable and not pop when we do this. Okay. So they're going to come together. So the feet are going to come together before they go up, which means I'm also going to want to bring them in as well so that they're following that. So let's see. They're popping in and then they're coming out. And actually, let's continue that arc. So let's see here. Up. I'm looking at this right foot, and actually we can do this, which will help us. Let's go ahead and pop a trail up on this one. So you can see somehow I have both of these selected. I want to make sure that this is zeroed out. Yeah, I don't know why that thing's moved, but anyways, we can see the path that this thing is following. So we can use this to help us make it more interesting. See how it comes straight down? So let's go back to this frame and move this over, maybe up a little bit. We're going to make a nice curve out of this. So we have a nice kind of curve that this is following. And let's do the same thing for the other foot and make sure that we get a nice curve out of this. So let's go back to the beginning just so we know. Forward, forward. It comes in. Let's bring this over so our curve is looking good. And then we'll keep this out and we'll bring it down. Now let's check what that looks like from the side as well. We can do the same thing. So in, and this will probably come forward a little bit just so that it has a nicer, okay, cool. That's pretty good. Same thing, we'll use the curve for the other side as well. This one is pretty vertical. So let's go backwards on this, forwards on this, forwards on this, and see if we can get a nice arc from the side too. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Ah, that's better. Feet come together, we hop up, we go down. All right, so let's take this. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my trails, and then I'm going to stop and save just in case, because crashing is always fun. And let's see if we can get the spine in this a little bit. So as we come, and I want to be a little bit subtle with this. And the reason being is if our spine is rocking back and forth too much in this, once again, it's going to be really distracting. I would implore you to experiment with this. What looks good for what it is that you're trying to do. So in this case, I'm going to take all of these spine, neck, head, etc. and I am going to key them at all the same frames as my other items. So I don't have to worry about missing a keyframe or something like that. And on our first pose in, the cool thing is I can move the pelvis, I can rotate the pelvis into it without worrying too much, and it can rock back. And then when we get to the top, I can rock it forward again, and on the way down, we'll go back. All right, so our pelvis is working. Let's call that will hopefully help loosen our spine a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to counter animate the body, hopefully. So let's just say that we're going to go like this. Nothing too crazy. Oh, and we do need to fix our arms. So we're going to lean forward, which means we may need to bring our body back. And then let's go straight vertical with our jump frame. And then at the top, let's get a little bit of compression in there. And we do want to put, actually, let's see what that looks like. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. See how far the head is going forward? I think that is going to be quite distracting. So what we're going to do is we're going to counter animate the body to account for the head, to try to keep the head a little bit more stable. So let's rock this back. Okay, so right now our head goes pretty far forward in this antic. So I'm gonna drop that. Let's see what that looks like. Better. And we also loosened up the spine a bit. So let's see what we can do about adding in the head as well. But I think that's feeling better overall. All right, so let's save this. And then let's see what we can do about getting a little bit of overlap in the head. And we may choose to take this out because, as I mentioned, if it gets too noisy, then it's a bit distracting. So, all right. So as our character comes down, when we're going, we want the character. Let's see. Basically, everything right now is going to be overlapping. This currently is in local space. We should be able to keep that in local space. Okay, so as the character comes in, head down, and we want the head to, usually you want the head to lead on the way up here, but let's just say that we're going vertical with this, and we will check our curves. Let's bring the head up a little bit. Okay, and then as we get to the top, I'm going to cheat the head to look down a bit at where we're going to. See what this feels like. And then it's going to come back a little bit. Okay, and then when it hits the ground, let's go 2 frames. And let's put a little bit of overlap in the head. Not a lot, just a little. See what that looks like. Okay, because everything's moving at the same time, it's not really getting the drag on the head that I was hoping for. And that is, let's just change this a little bit. Let's take this keyframe for these elements. I really wish there was a way to filter this for just what I had selected. Let me double check that again. Auto expand nodes on selection. Collapse all nodes. Expand. I want only the selected nodes. Selected nodes only. So if I select the neck and the head, yeah, it doesn't do it. Bummer. Okay. Actually, let's see one other thing. No, it's going to take everything. All right, let's just do them one at a time. There's got to be an easier way to do this. But for now, what we can do is we can take, there's our neck. Oh, fortunately, here's our head. Okay, they're at least close enough in the graph that I can see them. Okay, cool. So what we'll do is we will take these keys and this key, and let's shift it right a little bit. And then on the way down, let's do the same thing, except it doesn't even look like we have a keyframe on the neck here. So let's just shift the head over one frame, not two. It's very easy to get lost in this. I could do this for a long time because I know it's not where I want it to be, but we don't have a long time. So let's just kind of try to focus a little bit here on, I think we want the pitch. Nope, the yaw, nope, the roll. Okay. So we basically want the roll on all of these. And then you can kind of see what's happening here. Let's just take the head control. There's only a key on one axis. Let's go like so. And see what that looks like. Okay, I think that'll work. The one other thing I might want to do, you can see the arms. I think this would look different if you had a weapon in your hand, but right now you can see the arms are kind of animating a little bit. If we take this, right now our arms are in local space, I believe. Yeah, so let's try to switch these to world space so that they don't. It's interesting, it looks like they're counter animating, which is a little bit weird to me. So our upper arm only has one key. Yeah, this should be counter animating, I would think. That kind of looks like it's not counter animating. It's almost like world space is not working on this control. Okay, let's go back. Let's go back and maybe we'll just counter animate it just to be safe. So as we go up, you know, I think that's pretty subtle. Okay. I think that's gonna work for us. Okay, so let's wrap up our animation by saving. And then what we need to do is, actually we don't need to do anything because we already connected it to our animation sequence. So there's a live link. So if we take a look at our jump turn, you'll notice that it has all of the animation in it already, which is cool. Okay, now we are potentially going, in order for us to do the antic, which is the drop down, we're probably going to take this animation, duplicate it, and make some changes to it. But for now, we're good to go. Now, we do want one other thing. If you went through our previous turn in place tutorials, motion matching didn't use this, but the last one we did, there was the idea of, we were using the Lyra animations. And when the turn finished, you could use an anim curve to specify that the turn was done. So I think we are going to want a curve that lets us know that we have landed. And we could put it, like, for example, here. That way we know we're on the ground if we need to jump again. So let's go ahead and make that change now. So let's add a curve. Add a curve. Oh, maybe we need to go back to our animations. Okay, let's do that. Let's go to our skeleton. We'll bring our skeleton up. I'm kind of forgetting where this happens. Animation notifies. Here's our curves. Here we go, add a curve. This is going to be jump land. Jump, turn, landing. Okay, and then let's save that. And let's go back to our jump turn. Let's add this curve, and the curve we want is going to be this jump turn landing. And then if we double click it, we can start adding keys to it. So we said that we were going to be done right around here. So let's add a key here at 18, for example, and one here. And let's just say that we'll kind of keep this the same. So we're going to go 1. And then if we go back, when we look at this, you'll see we have our jump up. So our character is up, and then when we land, we're going to want to move this to happen around. We don't want them jumping before, let's say 18 is going to be, so let's just say 17 to 18 here. So let's just bring this back up, and this keyframe is going to come over to 17 to 18. So now we have a curve that we can reference in our animation graph to know that our character is back on the ground, so that we can trigger another jump if we need to. I can't remember if we're going to use that for sure, but we do. All right, so let's see where we are. We have our jump, we have our animation curve, and everything looks ready to go. Okay, great. So that's it. We finished arts and crafts time. We got our animation all ready to go, which is cool. I think it's probably worth mentioning that I've exaggerated the jump up quite a bit. We might actually want to have that a little bit lower, but it'll just be easier for us to troubleshoot. We can always go back, and it's also possible, once we're done, I'll show you when we get into some of the sequence evaluator stuff, to actually control the height of that based on turn speed, all kinds of stuff. But hopefully you'll have all the pieces you need to be able to do that. So with that, let's hop in and start connecting it all in. So here we are in Unreal. A couple things that I want to do is change. I would like to go to Manny. I just like using Manny personally. And then we're actually going to be creating our own animation blueprint. So let's go ahead and do that in our characters, mannequins, animations. Let's duplicate the Manny blueprint. We're going to call this ABP Manny jump turn. Okay, and then inside of here, let's dock this for you all to see. What we're going to do is change our preview scene also to be Manny. I just want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples. Let's compile and save that. Okay, so our animation graph is pretty straightforward. It is, if we look at our animation graph, this is the standard anim graph for the third-person character third-person character project. And pretty straightforward. We have our main states, our control rig, and our locomotion, and we're going to be working mostly in this locomotion section. And what we need to do here is, when we're in idle, we basically want it so that as our character turns, the camera turns, our character will jump turn to face the camera. Now, I've only ever done this in a top-down project, so this is going to probably look or be a little bit different, but we'll see how it goes as we go. So the big thing is, I just said we need to be able to detect or know when to turn. So we need to get a bunch of information that we can use to effectively, here, let's just put it in here. Let's add a new state. We're going to call this jump turn. And in here, this is where we're going to play our jump animation, but we need a way to get there. So we need a way to basically measure the difference. So let's go back to our update animation. And what we'll do is we'll add a pin, and we're going to get, just like we did in some of the previous tutorials, we're going to get, with a slight twist, for example, we're not using the motion matching method, I'm talking specifically about the root turn method, we're going to get the control rotation and then the character rotation, and we're going to get the difference between those two. So let's do that. And we already have a reference to our character. If we drag this up here. And what we can do in here is, let's get the controller. And then with that, let's get the rotation, get the control rotation. And then the other thing that I want to do is I want to get the actor rotation. So let's just get the actor rotation. Here's our actor rotation. And the value that we're interested in is the difference between these two, because we're trying to measure the difference. So if we zoom in here just to help you all out, we get the delta. This is going to give us the measured distance, and then let's split this, and this yaw right here is going to be our look at yaw. So let's call this, let's promote this to a variable, and we'll call this, I can't remember what we called it in our previous tutorial, turn, I think it's look at turn yaw rotation. We'll just call it look at turn yaw. That's fine. And then let's connect that into the last pin of our update. Now, just so you know, this is in the update animation event, and this is happening every time this animation blueprint ticks, because we need this yaw every time it ticks so we can get the difference on every basic frame or tick, basically. And then just to see this working, let's go ahead and do a quick print string on that so we can print that up. And if we go to our game, oh, we do need to connect in our new animation blueprint. If we go back to our third person character mesh, let's plug this in as our jump turn, compile and save that. And then now when we go back, we should see zeros printing. We do. Now, if we rotate, you can see the numbers change. As we rotate, we're getting -90. If we rotate the other way, we're getting +90. So now we have a value that we can use to calculate whether or not we should turn. Now we also do have an access none on the get controller. Let's fix that real quick. This is happening because there's a scenario where the controller is not valid yet. So I'm just going to check to see if it's valid. Is valid, just to get rid of the error. It would probably be cleaner to do this one time, check if it's valid, store it, but that's fine. We'll just go with this for now for the purpose of the demo. I'm going to leave this print in here so that we can use it as a reference and we can see it, and we'll take it out towards the end. But now that we have what we need to be able to measure, we need to, let's go ahead and get to basically doing our transition. So in here, what we said is we want to transition when our turn yaw reaches a certain value. So in this case, in this transition, what we want to do is let's get our look at turn yaw, and let's see if it's greater than a value. And for now, let's just pick a value like, let's do 80 and see how that goes. Now, one thing to note, if you recall, we were printing, when we turned right, we were printing negative numbers, and left we were printing positive numbers. So this could be positive or negative. So in order to be able to catch both directions, we would actually want the absolute value. And the reason we don't need a direction is because we are actually going to be changing our rotation based on our look at or mouse position, if you will. So let's compile this and let's just test to see if we even get a jump. So as we turn, when we hit, I think it was 80. Oh, we don't get a jump because we didn't actually put the jump in, but we did get the transition. So we know that that happened. So let's go into our jump and let's add in a sequence player. So play sequence. So here's our sequence player, and the sequence I want to play is the jump turn that we created, and we can just plug that in. All right, let's compile and save this, and then let's try that again. So now when we get to 80, cool, our character jumps. Now, here's the problem. Our character continues to jump, and it's not really a problem, we just haven't implemented it yet. Basically, all that's happened is we have no way to get back. So let's transition back to idle, and we will make this, but to start with, just the automatic transition. When the animation is done, it will transition back. Okay, so when we go right, we're jumping. When we go forward, we're back. Now, there's a couple things I want you to notice. First off, our feet are messed up, and we're not actually turning. So there's two things that are happening here. If we go back to our anim graph, currently our control rig is still trying to plant our feet on the ground, because we're not technically in the air, we're just animating the character off the ground. So let's go ahead and just skip the control rig for right now. That's one piece of it. And then the second piece is a little bit more interesting. First, we should see our feet are much better. Yep, we got our nice foot animation, which is cool, but we need to actually turn our character as this happens. So here's what we're going to do. In our event graph, what I'm going to do is we are going to get, let's see here, we have our character, we have our actor rotation, this is our current actor rotation, and this is our controller rotation. So let's promote one of these to a variable, or maybe both of these. Hold on one second. Okay, and the one that I'm going to promote to a variable is our look at. So let's just promote this to a variable. This is going to be our, connect this in. Let's call this our control rotation. Okay, now what we want to do at the end here is we want to set our actor. What we're ultimately going to do is we're going to take our character and we're going to set the actor rotation. Now, what are we going to set this to? We don't want it to just set straight to our look at rotation, our control rotation, although maybe we could. Let's just see what that looks like if we get our control rotation and we set this. When we do this, what's going to happen is our capsule is going to turn, okay? And this is actually going to work pretty well. However, the problem is we're never going to get enough of a delta between where we're looking and enough to jump. We need a delay, basically. We don't want the turn to happen until the jump starts. So let's walk through this. So if we come in here and we're looking at our locomotion, this is where our jump, this is what allows us to jump when we go from idle to jump turn. So what I want to do in here, in addition to turning off loop animation, so many checkboxes, is when we come into the jump state, I want to basically say, hey, jump is active. And then if jump is active, I want to turn our character capsule to face. And when jump's not active, I don't want it turning. So what we're going to do is when we come into this state, we are going to on state entry, let's create a binding. This binding is going to be on state entry jump turn. That way we know what it is. And in here, I'm going to create a new variable. This new variable is going to be jump active, for example. Actually, we should call that jump turn because there's a difference between jump and jump turn. So let's call it jump turn active. And what I want to do is I want to set this to true. Okay. We'll set that to true. And then on the flip side, when we leave this state on state exit, we want to do the opposite. We want to say that the jump turn is not active. So let's create a binding. So this is on state exit, jump turn. And then what we'll do is we will set this variable to false. So now we have a variable or a way to know whether or not we are currently in the process of playing a jump animation. So when we go back to our event graph, we only want to do this turn, and we're going to make some changes to this turn, I think, and I'll show you why in a second. We only want to do this turn is if our jump is active. So let's get this, and we'll put in a branch. I did that by holding the B key and left clicking, or you can just right click and type branch. So if our jump is active, we're going to do our rotation. So if we compile, let's just save all, just in case. When we press play, as I go right, you'll notice my character doesn't move. Once I hit 80, boom, character moved. So that's working. However, notice the pop. That is a crazy pop. And that is how it makes sense, because what's happening is starting from where we're facing forward, we have 0. We get to 80. When we get to 80, all of a sudden in our blueprint, if we look at it, in our animation blueprint, all of a sudden we're setting our actor rotation to 80 degrees. So it looks like a giant pop. Well, rather than doing this as a straight set, what we can do is we can interpolate to that, which is basically a fancy way of saying we're going to ease in over time. We're going to take a little bit at a time and go. And one of the easiest ways to do that is let's take our control rotation and let's do an R interp 2. So this is an interp 2, and what we want is we want our target. So our target in this case is the control rotation. The current is our actor rotation. So let's get the character and get the actor rotation. So this is where our actor is currently facing. This is where it's going to. And then the delta time. The delta time is just how much time has passed since the last time we got here. So let's get a property access to get that. Property access. And in here we'll just type in Sometimes it just does that. All right, so here we get our delta time. And then our interp speed. The higher the interp speed, the faster it gets there. So let's just try 1 to start with, and we can look at what that looks like. So let's compile that, and I've just connected this in. So basically each frame it is going to move a little bit towards the goal, rather than all at once. So if we press play now, when we rotate, now that's a little slow because the character doesn't get all the way there. Okay, so let's try something like 4. See if that feels better. That feels better. I think that feels way better. Okay, now you can see what I was talking about. This jump is a little extreme. It doesn't need to be that extreme for what we're doing here. The idea is just to give the idea that the character's off the ground so we could spin it all the way around if we wanted to. Now, what I want to do is a couple things. If we go back to our state machine, our jump turn, I think it could jump earlier. So let's go ahead and in here, let's go into here. Let's create a new variable. I'm going to call this the jump turn threshold because we might be using this later. I'm going to set this, compile this. We'll set this default float to. We think 80 is too much. Let's try 55. Or you know what? Let's try 50. And we'll plug this in and compile it. So now our character is going to jump a little bit sooner. I think that looks pretty good. Now, it's worth mentioning, one of the things that is a little bit off about it is we don't have any look at going right now. Our character, I think this will feel much better if we had a look at on top of this, but we're just doing the jump turn. But the cool thing about this now is when I hop really far, I don't have to worry about foot placement. Now, I do have a thing that's happening right now where you can see the feet are still sliding and rotating. You can see that? So let's see if we can, basically the character hits the ground and the feet are still sliding and rotating. So let's see if we can't take care of that in a couple different ways. Now, there's also, and for some of this is a little harder to see than when we're doing root motion. So I'm actually just going to explain some of this. If we look at our jump turn, the animation, what's happening is as we come down, we're actually landed, interestingly enough, at right around 15-ish. And then we have all of this animation time before we finish. We technically don't need this. We only need up to where the character stands, which is about right here. So frame 19-ish. So we probably want to adjust this a little bit, but for the sake of argument, what's happening is our character's jumping, they're hitting the ground. This animation has not finished yet. So the jump is still active. The jump is still active. And because the jump is still active, the turn is still active. So what we want to do is we either need to cut the animation here, which we don't want to do, or we need to do something similar to what we did with the root motion thing is once we hit the ground, we want to transition into a recovery state. So let's do that. And also we need to make some changes to this curve. We want this to happen. The transition to the recovery state should be around like full on in effect by about frame 15. So let's back this up to frame 14, and it's giving me measurements in decimals instead of frames. So that's probably why we had it in the wrong place to begin with. 16, let's go 15. Okay, so we're at 14, we're at 1, double check, 1, and 15, we're at 0. Great, so let's close that. Save this, and we can zoom out. Okay, so basically as we hit, that's where we would want, and we may even need to move it 1 frame sooner because our feet are on the ground technically by about frame 14. So let's go 1 frame sooner. Same thing here. Double check our values. This is 0, this is 1. So we can close that curve editor. We can save this. And now what's going to happen when we look at this, this is our jump turn landing curve. We're definitely on the ground here. So what we want to do is when this curve goes to 0, we're going to transition to a recovery stage. And in that recovery stage, what's going to be happening is our character is recovering. It's like going back to standing up. In that time, it is possible, but difficult with this because it's only a few frames, that the character might need to jump again. So let's go back and account for that. In our locomotion state machine, what we're going to do is we're going to add a new state. This state is going to be our jump turn recovery. Okay, and in the jump turn recovery, when we're done with it, we're going to go back to idle. That is going to happen just normal stuff, automatic when the animation is done playing. We're going to get rid of this transition back to idle because we don't need it anymore. And we need to decide when we go from, oops, I accidentally clicked. When we go from jump turn to jump turn recovery, we were just looking at that. We're going to do that when that curve value goes to 0. So let's get a curve value, and that curve value was called jump turn landing. So this is going to be jump turn landing. Okay, and when that is nearly 0, we will transition. Okay. Now, speaking of nearly 0, I think part of this comes from controllers where you might have a little bit of, and other, like the habits, but you probably could use 0 in this case, but you have to be careful because of, depending on how you're blending, it can make a difference. So let's compile and save that. So now that we've got our locomotion, we have an ability to jump to our recovery. When our recovery is done, we're going to come out. Now, we do need to do some work in our recovery. We need to play a sequence. So let's play sequence. So here's our sequence player. And what are we going to play? We are going to play the same animation, our jump turn. Okay? But the trick is we wanted to start where the jump finished. So we do need to do a little bit of work. So let's see, this may just work because it's so few frames, but let's see, we at least have this. We can turn off loop animation. If we see a double jump, it's because we're playing the jump animation, the character starts to land, and then it comes in here and it starts again from the beginning, so it starts to jump again. Let's see if we see that. But it's only a few frames, so we may not see it. Let's see. Okay, it actually looks pretty good. However, interestingly enough, when we're in the air, our character is no longer turning. So let's go back and figure out what we broke here. When we come into our jump turn, on state entry, on state exit, all those things are still the same. That looks good. And then we should be transitioning into this jump turn recovery. And from our jump turn no, I don't think that's it. I don't think that's it. We should, when we get to our jump turn recovery, be on the ground. But for some reason, it's almost like where's our blueprint event graph? It's almost like this jump turn is not active. Let's double check. See if we're hitting this breakpoint real quick. So let's bring this up and see if we can see what's happening. Is it transitioning too fast? So what we should see, and actually I need to press play real quick to get the debug set. I want to debug our player, and then let's get this so we can see it. All right, so our character is in idle. When we start turning, we should see it go to jump turn. But it did, it went to jump turn, but I don't know if you noticed, it went straight from jump turn to jump turn recovery. There was no delay, and it shouldn't do that until jump turn landing is nearly equal to 0, which shouldn't happen until the character is almost back on the ground. So what is our value here on this jump turn landing? This is frame 43, this is 1, and this is 0. Let's save that. Let's reopen it just to double check it. So this goes to 0 right when the feet hit the ground. So if we press play on this, let's slow that down. It looked like it was going, so I did a slow-mo 0.25. Look at that, it's already into the recovery and we haven't even hit the ground. So something is suspect with our transition here. And it could be blending. Could be our blending type. So what's happening is we have jump turn landing. Let's try equals 0. Equals 0. Or let's do less than or equal to 0. Just to be safe here. And where is our blueprint? Locomotion. Okay. Yeah, it's going straight there. Oh, I know why. This is why this is important, y'all. Okay. So here's what's happening. Our jump turn is playing. It gets to frame, any frame at all. And you're about 0.2, because our transition is 0.2, what's happening is blending with the next jump turn and recovery, which is starting from frame 1. What is the value of jump turn yaw info at frame 1, right? Or at the end frame. And it's blending those two curves together and it's getting all kinds of funky values. So let's try no blend time just to see if I'm like anywhere remotely right. And then also let's change this to inertialization. So an inertialization blend, what it will do is it will only use it basically stops evaluating the first animation as part of the transition. It uses the inertia of it to continue. In order to use this, we need to put in an inertialization node in here. So let's put in an inertialization. When we do this, if we go compile and save, let's see where we get to. Okay, we're still not jumping. Let me go back to our locomotion. Let's get our sequence player. Let's start playing. I want to start this from, where is this? This is 0.47. Start position 0.47. Okay, it's definitely having some problems with that because of the blend. So let's go and let's do this right. I was hoping to kind of show you stepping through it without it actually causing a problem. So we're going to go back to nearly 0. And what we're going to do is we are going to keep this as inertialization, but we're going to keep our blend time at 0.2 so we have some. Okay, and then what we need to do is we need to change it so that when we go from jump turn to jump turn recovery, we're telling jump turn recovery where to start. So to do that, in jump turn recovery, let's get rid of this first part and let's create a new variable called, this is going to be jump turn anim time. Okay, and that is what we are going to play. That is what we are going to bind this start position to. And it's going to, you can't see it because it's off screen, but I'm choosing the variable jump turn anim time and you can see it show up here. However, we need to do the work. I was hoping to like step you through the mistakes, but it's kind of a little bit too convoluted. So let's go into our jump turn. Here's what we need to do. When our jump turn first starts, we need to set our jump turn animation time. We need to initialize it, set it up. we need to set that to 0 because that's where we're starting from. So when this becomes relevant, we're going to create a binding. This is going to be on relevant and relevant jump turn. And I'm going to be very specific about this. This is sequence player. And what we're going to do in here is we are going to set our anim time, set our jump anim time to 0. Then what we need to do is every time we update in this animation, we need to increase the value by how much time has passed. So let's go back to our sequence and let's add an update. So we're going to create a binding here. This is going to be on update jump turn sequence player. And on our update, what we're going to do is we are going to specify not our jump turn threshold, or jump turn anim time. We are going to set it. And what are we going to set it to? We are going to set it to its current value plus how much time has passed. And how much time has passed is calculated or kept track for us in the property access for the delta time. So let's get the delta, delta, delta. That's going to be our new value. Okay. Let's compile and save that. And then if we press play, we got nothing. Let's go back to our jump turn. We're updating our anim time. It's going back to 0. This is happening when our jump turn landing hits, but we're not specifying that our jump turn sequence update is dynamic, I think, on the jump turn recovery. Do we need to set this to dynamic? It's a dynamic value, just in case. Compile. We do have post-process in here. Oh, we do have looping somewhere as well. Is this set to looping? That's not looping. Locomotion, is this set to looping? Jump to fall loop is animation graph. Hold on. This is automatic using shared. This is using inertialization. We have our jump recovery, compile and save. When we rotate, it's trying to play, but it is not actually playing forward. Where are we in this graph? Doesn't seem to matter how many times I've done these tutorials, something always goes fun, y'all. Okay, we are currently stuck in this jump recovery. And the reason for that is, okay. So what's happening is, I thought it would just go through once, but what's happening is we come from our jump turn into our jump turn recovery. As a result of it, we get stuck here because technically our yaw is still greater than the value, so our animation's still playing. So here's what I want to do. I want to transition back to jump turn. That transition is the exact same as this one. When our absolute value of the look at turn is greater than our threshold, this is what we're going to do. So let's take this and make this a shared one, and this is going to be once to turn. And then we can use this as our shared one. We'll make this our wants to turn. Let's see if this helps us. Okay, there we go. We finally hit our breakpoint again. There we go. Okay, we're back. That was fun. Something always goes fun, y'all. Okay, so the cool thing is, this is pretty fast. Okay, it's a little bit high, right? A little bit exaggerated, but that's okay for the purpose of the tutorial. We can dial this back a little bit in a minute. Let me think about if there's anything we're missing in here. Let's just try a couple things. Okay, so why are we getting a double jump? We're getting a double jump because what's happening is the animation is, we're turning too far for how far our animation could go, right? So there is there is a potential where what you want to do, if you want to control this, we're not going to cover this in this tutorial, but what you could do is, depending on how fast you're rotating or etc., you can change the height of the jump and so on. The overall point is we have a nice jump in place, which is cool. I feel like that looks pretty good. And if we feel like that's too high, it's a little distracting, what we can do is we can go back to our art source. Let's go to our turn in place. We need our anim stage actually. Let's go to our anim stage instead. So under our maps, our anim stage, let's go to our art sequence. Okay, so all we're going to do is we're going to tone this down. Unfortunately, it seems like we're missing an easy way to just show me only the Z values. So let's just see what we can do here. We're going to bring up our, oh, you know what we could, no, that's not what I want to do. Let's just take these. And what we'll do is, basically what I'm missing here is I would like the ability to only show these three curves is basically what I want. And so far I've found no way to do that. So if you know how to do that, please tell me. But I'm right in the middle of a tutorial, so that's kind of hard to figure out. So let's just take these. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce this by half. And I'm going to do that by taking this, I'm going to go times equals 0.5. So that reduced that by half. Now let's see. Yeah, I think that works. Okay, so what this does is it takes each of these selected keys times equals 0.5, drops it down by half. So now that jump height should be half of what it was. Yeah, it's way less. And actually, I don't know why our, okay, so it's a lot lower. We got a little bit of a pop in our knee, but that's fine for the purpose of this. The whole point of this was to show you all that you can update and change these things so that you dial it back so that it makes a little more sense for what it is that you're doing. So in this particular case, if we go back to our maps, we go to our third person map again, when we do our jump in place now, it's a little more subtle. It's not nearly as crazy as it was. Okay, so that's just kind of a quick loop of basically how we can use a jump animation, get our character's feet off the ground so that we can turn and then come back down. That way we're not troubled with foot placement. It's particularly useful if you have quads and very complex characters, etc. Now, there's a couple things that are worth mentioning here. Remember, we are animating the character off the ground. The capsule is not off the ground. It is possible that you would potentially want to change this so that what is actually happening is all of that translate value is actually the capsule being off the ground, depending on what your goal is with it. Now, before we wrap, I wanted to show you one other cool trick that this is going to be a cool practical example of how to use a character facing to drive the animation instead. We're basically going to use an outside value to drive the timeline of an animation. And we're going to do that by basically creating an antic for our jump, basically the compression. So we're going to take our character and we're going to create the antic. They're going to kind of squash down, and then they're actually going to play the jump. So let's do that and take a look at how we can do that. Okay, so what we're going to do is let's go back to our anim stage because we are going to be doing a little bit of animation. So in our third person maps, we'll go back to our anim stage. And what I want to do is I want to duplicate this jump turn. I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to call this jump turn antic. And in here, what I want to do is I'm going to immediately save this out as a different linked animation because I don't want to accidentally overwrite the other one. I'm not sure what it would do. See how there's already an open one? I'm going to create a linked animation sequence. I am going to put it in the same folder, but this one is going to be the animation sequence jump turn antic. Okay, and let's go ahead and export. All right, now this is the same animation as we had before. The antic part of it is going to be this squash, these first 4 frames. So what I want to do is I want to take our mannequin and let's take a look at our keyframes. Okay, so let's come up here. Here's our mannequin. Let's consolidate this. And what we can do is we can key all just to make sure it's all keyed. I'm going to delete all of these keyframes, everything after 4. And then let's just say we're going to use 10 frames. Let's change this to end at frame 10. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to extend it out. And this is going to scale the curves. So this antic is now actually happening over 10 frames instead of 4. And I'm doing that to give me basically more frames to deal with, so that the change is more subtle, because I'm going to take this and I'm going to split it up. And basically what we're going to do is, if we're facing forward, there's going to be no antic, and as we gradually go towards the right, the character's going to start to squat down, and then right when they get to the end, they're going to jump up. Okay, so this is going to be our new antic. All right, that's all that is. And let's go ahead and make this end here at 11. At 11, that's fine. Let's save this. Let's double check that we can close our second content browser. Let's double check that our antic animation is correct. Animations, Manny, jump antic. This is all it is. So we've created our antic, which is cool. Okay, and now what we need to do is we need to plug this in, and this is going to change a little bit of the way our idle works. So most of this is to show you how this works. So let's go into our, actually while we're here, let's change one more thing. So let's close this sequencer down and let's go back to our other sequencer. This is our jump turn. Our jump turn is still the full jump. Okay, if our antic happens and then as our character's squatting down, they get to that point where they're going to jump, they're going to stand back up and then squat back down again and then jump again, because our jump includes this. So let's duplicate this, and that way we have everything, so we can kind of plug it all in and play with it and you can see what's happening. So I'm going to actually close this sequencer, do the same thing again. I'm going to duplicate this one, and this is going to be jump turn only. Jump turn only. I don't like that name. Fine, for now it's fine. Okay, this would probably be jump turn full and jump turn only in real life, but that's okay. So when we come in here, let's go ahead and same thing. Let's export this, create a linked animation sequence, and we'll put it in the animations Manny folder, animation sequence, jump turn only. Okay, and we'll go ahead and do that. And then let's take this, and what we're going to do is we're just going to simply change this so it starts at frame 4 instead. So let's take this and go to frame 4 and go save. And then let's double check that that actually did update our animations. So our jump turn should still be the full thing. Yep, our feet come together, it squats down, it comes together, everything's fine. Then our jump antic should just be the squat down. It's cool. And then our jump turn only should not have the squat down at the beginning. So if we go, it's basically starting from squatted and the feet start moving in right away. So this is the one we want. So now let's go ahead and do our experiment that I was talking about. So we can close that. Let's come back here. Let's take our sequencer. We can close that down. We can open our maps. Go back to our third person map. So we have something to test on. And then what we are going to do is, let's make a change. So our jump turn locomotion, what I want to do is in this idle here, rather than playing the idle, what I'm going to do, and you'll see the problem with this, you would have to do like a combination of an idle and a jump, but it's still going to be cool. You're still going to learn a lot, and I think you'll be able to extrapolate what you might want to do with this stuff. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to add a sequence evaluator here. Now, a sequence evaluator, if you didn't watch our last tutorial on turn root motion, is So a player starts an animation from a time and continues playing. A sequence evaluator takes any animation and gets you an explicit frame from that animation at the time that you specify. So in this particular case, what we are going to do is let's go ahead and I'm going to get rid of this as a pen. No, I didn't mean to do that. We don't want this as a pen. Explicit time is not going to be a pen. We don't need that. And what we're going to do is we are going to, when we come in here, we are going to on update, well, first we can connect this in, and then on update, let's create a binding. So, and this, now you'll understand why I named everything the way I did before. This is actually just to help keep it clear. So this is going to be on update idle, idle, jump, antic. Okay, so in here, how do we figure out which frame we want from our animation? Okay, so when we're facing forward, we have 0 degree offset. By the time we get to 90 or 60 or whatever our jump turn threshold is, we want our full antic to have played. So we are actually going to use the character's yaw to figure out which way or how much of the animation we have played. So here's what we're going to do. Let's get a property axis, or just property axis. And in here, let's get the look at yaw. So this is a look at turn yaw. And I'm going to take the absolute value of this because I want it to work left or right. Similarly, because the negative numbers aren't going to help us. Man, we are having some problems with the editor right now. Okay, so then what we are also going to do is we need to know how much of our animation has played already. So let's go ahead and get, we need to convert this to a sequence, so basically when we're doing this dynamic sequence players and evaluators and things like that, this function doesn't know what type of node this is. So we need to convert this to a sequence evaluator. Now that it knows it's a sequence evaluator, we can do things like get the sequence. From the sequence, now we can get the play length. Get the play length. And with this play length, we can figure out how much squatting we're going to do per degree of rotation is effectively what we're going to do. So let's get that play length and divide it by our jump threshold, or jump turn threshold. Okay, so in this case, our jump turn threshold is 50. So we're taking, in our case, 10, dividing by 50, and that's going to figure out how much we turn per degree, if you will. All right, now we are going to actually do a little bit more here. And then what we want to do is we want to also take our turn yaw rate and divide it. Do I need to do that? I'm also going to take this and divide it by the threshold. And this will become clear in a second. So this is basically taking our current turn yaw by 50 so that by the time we go from 0 to 50, 50 is going to be 1, okay? And 0 is going to be 0, for example. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to get a runtime curve. Let's do a runtime curve. Get a runtime curve float value. All right, so what we're going to do is let's make this, promote this to a variable. This is going to be our curve. Let's compile this. Now let me show you how this is going to work. So there's a curve here. Let's just make it real quick. If we add a key here and add a key here, at time 1, it's going to be a value of 1. At time 0, it's going to be a value of 0. So when our current in time, in this case, our look at yaw rate divided by the jump threshold. So when our look at is 0, it's going to look at in time 0. When our look at is 50, it's going to look at 50 divided by 50 is what? 1. It's going to look at frame 1 and it's going to give us a value of 1. So that's how that's being used. And the default value is going to be equal to our absolute value times this division. So what this is depending on how far we've rotated, we need to get the number of degrees and this is, here we go, cool. So now that we've got that, we're going to take this and we are going to use this to set our time. So here we go. We're going to take our sequence evaluator and let's set explicit time. We'll do that up here. So when we connect this in, we're going to connect that in like so. And let's compile and save that. We do have an error. Where is it? Oh, we don't have we don't have an anim sequence set yet. So let's go back. We do need to set our anim sequence, our animation sequence. This is our jump turn antic. So when we compile this, now we should be getting that. Okay, so as our character turns, and the overall thing to understand here is we're driving which frame of animation is being selected based on the amount of rotation. That's the big picture, okay? Now, all the math, everything behind it, we may have gotten it wrong, but let's just see how we did. As we turn, I am not seeing it yet. Doesn't look good. So let's go back and see what we missed. In the idle state, our antic, maybe we need to set our explicit time to be dynamic. Let's just make sure that that is okay. Yep, that's all it was. Okay, so as our character turns, they're squatting down and then they jump. Okay, now I think there is something wrong with our math because we've only gone, look at this, we're at 0, we've gone about 10 degrees and we're already at the end. So let's double check our math here a little bit. All right, this is how far we've rotated. This is the value. This is our jump threshold of 50. Our in time and our in default value. I don't know that we even need this. I want to see something. Do we even need that? We don't even need that. Okay, let's watch this. The time at which to evaluate the curve. And the time in this case is going to be the look at yaw, which is 0 to 50 divided by 50. And this curve goes 0 to 1. And then our sequence time. Oh, interesting. I wonder what this time is. This time is a single precision time in what? Okay, so hold on a second. If we look at our animation, our animations, this animation is only, the antic is only 10 frames long. So the time of, you can see here, this is 0.33. Okay, so yes, we have a little bit of a math issue here. The value that we're getting when we get to 1 is too high. So what we want is 0 to 1. Okay, let's see if we can change it. There's a couple ways we could potentially fix this. When this is 1, this should be, we could say that the value is 0.33, for example. Let's see if that gives us a better. Yeah, that's it. Look at that. Okay, so here's what's happening. We actually don't, we probably could use this fancy stuff to figure out the jump length and everything like that, or we can just specify that this at the value of 1 is, but basically because this animation is only 10 frames long, the maximum amount of time is 0.33, and so actually what we would want is to make sure we specify that as such. So we probably could get the play length. Trying to think of these things in the middle of a tutorial is always fun, but if I was going to try, what we want is we want 0 to 1. We basically want this value of 1 to be 0.33 instead. But the problem is if it goes higher than that, I don't know what's going to happen. So I like this solution better for now, but effectively if we took this and we multiplied it by the play length, that value, when this is 1, this output is going to be the 0.33. So technically, if we connect this up, let's just try it. Let's connect this. Let's take this in value to 1 to 1, and let's see if that works too. Yeah, that works too. Okay, now, here's what's happening. I'm seeing a little bit of a double bouncy thing going. It actually doesn't look bad. Okay, so why is that happening? We got through all this math. I am going to disconnect this for right now, and I'm going to just hard specify 0.33 because I don't want too many moving parts in here, but at least now you understand what's happening there. Let's go back to our jump turn. This is all set up. That's well and good. Now, if we look at our jump turn, what sequence are we playing here? The sequence we're playing is our jump turn. This is the full jump turn. So what's happening is our character squatting down, then it's getting to the jump turn part, and it's basically popping up, squatting down again, and then jumping. So that might be why we're feeling that double bounce. So let's see if we just change this to the jump only, if that feels better when we're playing. Interesting. Oh, we have two different animations selected. And what I mean by that is when we come to our jump turn recovery, there's a couple things that are happening. This should be jump turn only as well, to make sure we have that. And then also remember, our transition is controlled by this jump turn landing. If we look at our jump turn only, it doesn't even have that curve. So we need that curve. So let's see, I wonder if we can copy paste that. Should we try it? Let's try it. Here's our jump turn. Let's take this curve and copy it. And let's go to our jump turn only. And let's try paste. Oh, that worked. Okay, but the timing of it's going to be different. So our feet hit the ground. Wait. Actually, it's not that far off. Interesting. This is frame 13, 14. Okay, cool. We'll go with that. Okay, let's see if that looks a little bit better. Yeah. Okay, all right. So what might be happening is when we complete our jump, our facing is still far enough along that we are triggering our antic as well. So we're getting a little bit of a bounce. If we jump straight and it goes straight in, maybe we don't get that double bounce as much. Now, another thing we can do is right now from the beginning, we're kind of doing our crunch down. What we can do is we can soften that. So it's easier to see if we start from the beginning. As we, uh-oh, no crash. Whew. Okay. As we start dropping down, you can see we drop down straight from 0. It would be nice if maybe we didn't drop down right away. Maybe we put a delay in there. That's why we made that curve. We can do that. If we go back to our locomotion inside of our idle state, inside of this jump turn, this curve, if all we do is specify that this keyframe, let's flatten this. So first off, it's going to make it smoother in and out. It's just going to ease in and out. And then second, what we can do is we can change when this starts. So if we want to move this over to like 0.4, for example, no, not 0.1, 0.4 and 0. Make sure this is 0. Okay, what's going to happen is the actual antic is going to delay. Look at the antic doesn't start till much later, right? Cool. Okay, so the whole point of that was to give you a potential practical example of how you can use the explicit time of a sequence evaluator to actually drive animations with something else in your scene. So we're basically using our character's yaw to choose which frame of animation is playing, and we can change how that feels based on whatever it is we want. Like we can adjust the curve, etc. So I thought that was a really cool example to tie in. Obviously, in this particular case, you would probably want to also have, figure out your additive breathe, all kinds of stuff. Now, the one other thing that we do need to do is we need to figure out what is going on with our foot IK. So let's hop back in for one more split second and see if we can't nail down our foot IK. Okay, so here we are in Unreal, and let's take a look at this jump turn and see what we're going to run into as far as bringing back our foot plants. And there's a couple pieces to this that are worth pointing out. If we connect this back in, effectively what's going to happen is it's kind of going to break our animation. So it's still going to work, our character jumps, but notice that the feet are completely straight down. The reason the feet are completely straight down is because the trace for the IK foot is in the control rig is coming from the IK left foot position, which I do not believe is accounted for in our sequencer. So even if we were to control the alpha of this control rig with our jump active, so let's get our jump active. Okay, let's just say that we basically don't want the control rig on when our jump is active. So jump turn active. If it's not active, if that's not true, then we want this to be on. Okay, so now when we play, you'll see the difference. When we jump, our animation in the jump looks right, but look at how the feet snap back at the end. The feet are snapping back to a weird spot. And the reason the feet are snapping back to the weird spot is, once again, if we look, and this is just kind of a general heads up to be aware of, if we take a look at this control rig, this control rig is using, should do IK trace, it's getting the IK foot left. IK foot underscore capital L. Now, let's go back and see if that joint is even being driven in the mannequin body control rig. And I don't think it is. Where did our mannequin body go? Here it is. So let's see here. Thigh. Yeah, it's not even here. It doesn't even exist. So what's happening is our IK foot L is basically being, it's going back to just wherever the default is. Who knows even knows what exactly is going on. So I'm pretty sure. Yeah, we don't even see that. So what we would have to do is we would want, if we're going to use the IK with our jump turn in place, we would need to do some work to update our CR base control rig to have the idea of this IK foot L. If we take a look at Manny, let's just see here. If we go to Manny and we look at Manny's skeleton, this IK foot L and R, they're here. They're just not accounted for. Interestingly enough, they don't even have the capital letter there. That's interesting. But they're not being accounted for anywhere in here that I can see. Nowhere in the rig hierarchy do I see that. So let's see if we can see it in here. IK foot R. No results found. So there really is no super easy way for us to use this. It's not that it's not easy, but we would need to make some updates. And it's mostly just me saying, hey, don't get distracted by this. All right, for now I'm going to skip the control rig placement, and don't lose sight of everything that you just learned in this tutorial, right? The goal here was to do a turn in place that wasn't turn in place. The best turn in place is not a turn in place, like I said at the beginning. That's not entirely true. And I remember my caveat with that is I think motion matching may change that in the future. But as a result of that, we basically set up a way for our characters to be able to turn, to face different directions, especially when they have complex quadrupeds, etc., using the idea of a jump turn. So not only did we learn about the idea of a jump turn and how to drive that with our characters facing, but we also went a step further and we used a sequence evaluator to choose a specific frame of animation and drive that based on the rotation of a character, which is actually really, really cool. So as always, and actually one last thought, I will look to see about recording a tutorial on how to potentially adapt for the missing IK foot placement stuff in a future training or tutorial or something like that. So as always, all feedback and comments are welcome. Please throw those down in the comments down below. I hope everybody has an awesome rest of your week and that I get the chance to see you in an upcoming live stream. My name's Kevin. Take it easy.